You're sitting there again, staring at your screen. On one tab, there's a course about data science. On another tab, you're watching videos about filmmaking. Your notebook has half-finished plans for a startup, a podcast, and maybe even a book. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet voice whispers, "Why can't I just pick one thing?" You start wondering if something is wrong with you. Maybe you lack discipline. Maybe you're easily distracted. Or just maybe you're exactly what people accuse you of being. A jack of all trades, master of none. But what if that diagnosis is completely wrong? What if your problem isn't that you quit too easily? What if your real problem is that you see too many possible paths at once? You look at the world and see doors everywhere. Every door looks interesting. Every path feels like a version of the life you could live. And instead of walking confidently through one door, you stand frozen in the hallway. Psychologists actually have a name for this condition. They call it the scanner dilemma. It's the feeling captured perfectly by the sentence, "I could do anything if I only knew what it was." Society, of course, has its own word for people like this. They call you a dilettante, someone who dabbles in everything but never goes deep. And that label carries a heavy emotional weight. It turns curiosity into a career liability. But here is the truth that rarely gets said out loud. That old criticism was designed for a completely different world. And in today's world, it might be exactly backwards. So today, we're going to do something important. We're going to dismantle the anxiety around having many interests. And more importantly, we're going to look at the geometry of a modern career. Once you understand the shape of success in the modern world, the confusion begins to fade, and a path starts to appear. For most of the 20th century, the safest path in life was specialization. Pick one skill, go deep, and stay there for 40 years. It worked because the world itself was stable then. In other words, society functioned like a giant chessboard. The rules were clear, the pieces moved in known patterns, and if you studied the game long enough, you could become extremely good at it. Psychologists call this a kind learning environment. This environment rewards deep repetition. And so, the world built a career model around that idea, a model known as the I-shaped professionalism. To understand it, imagine the letter I, a single vertical line that represents deep knowledge in only one field. However, there's just one problem. That world is disappearing. The modern world is not a chessboard anymore. It's more like a constantly shifting maze. Industries appear and vanish within a decade. New technologies rewrite entire professions overnight. And sometimes, the patterns only become visible years later. Psychologists call this a wicked learning environment. And wicked environments reward a very different kind of mind. In a wicked environment, rigid expertise can sometimes become a liability because hyper-specialists often develop blind spots. When all you have is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. When the world throws you a problem that looks like a screw, the hammer stops working. Now, just to be clear, the world absolutely needs specialists. Their deep knowledge builds bridges, designs airplanes, and performs surgery. But the mistake society made was assuming that everyone should become one. It's like trying to measure every athlete using the rules of marathon running. Of course, the sprinter looks like they're doing something wrong, but in reality, the sprinter was simply built for a different race. And that brings us to the idea that might change how you see your entire career. Most people fall into one of three career shapes. The first is the I shape we've already described. The second is the dash shape, that is wide curiosity and little depth. Many scanners accidentally fall into this trap. They explore endlessly, but never stay long enough to build a foundation. The third shape is the M-shaped professional. This is the architecture of a modern polymath. Imagine the letter M. It represents two deep pillars, connected by a wide bridge of curiosity. For example, one pillar might be data science. You go deep there and you build serious skill. Your second pillar might be storytelling. You study narrative structure, psychology, and persuasion. Then the horizontal bridge includes your interests in things like history, design, behavioral science, or philosophy. Now, something interesting happens. You're no longer only a data scientist. You become the person who can turn complex data into a story that executives actually understand. That combination is rare, and rare skills open doors that common skills cannot even knock on. Another example: an architect who studies biology might design buildings that mimic natural ecosystems. An economist who studies psychology might predict market behavior more accurately than someone who only studies numbers. This ability has a name. It's called far transfer. However, there's still a practical question we haven't answered yet, and that is, how do you actually build this kind of life without falling back into the trap of shallow curiosity? That is exactly where the strategy begins, and it starts with something called serial mastery. Most scanners make the same mistake. They try to build all their interests at the same time. Coding on Monday, music production on Tuesday, philosophy on Wednesday, starting a business on Thursday, and learning a new language on Friday. At first it feels exciting, but after a few months, something frustrating begins to happen. You'll notice that progress becomes painfully slow. This is simply because deep skill requires focused attention over time. So instead of chasing everything simultaneously, just master things in sequence, one pillar at a time. Think of it like building a house. You don't construct the roof, the walls, and the foundation all on the same day. You start with the foundation, then you move upward. Serial mastery works the same way. You choose one pillar and give it your full focus for a season. Maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months, or even 18 months. During that time, you go deep, you practice, you struggle, and you learn the hidden patterns of the field. Your goal isn't to become the world's greatest expert. Your goal is to become fluent. When you reach that point, your brain gains a permanent mental tool, a new lens for seeing the world. And once that lens exists, you can move on, because you've graduated. Speaking of moving on, there's another practical issue we need to address, and that is energy. The truth is, you cannot really explore without energy. Many scanners assume their job must also be their passion. But that idea can sometimes become a trap, because a job that consumes 110% of your mental energy leaves nothing left for exploration. And exploration is oxygen for a polymath mind. This is why many great thinkers throughout history chose surprisingly ordinary jobs. Take Albert Einstein, for example. Before becoming the most famous physicist in history, he worked as a patent clerk. It gave him cognitive surplus. After work, his brain still had room to wander. And in those quiet hours, he imagined riding on beams of light. He questioned time, he questioned space, and eventually, he produced ideas that reshaped physics forever. The lesson here isn't that everyone should become a patent clerk. The lesson is that your job can serve as a platform instead of a prison. Sometimes, the smartest career move isn't chasing the most exciting job. It's choosing a job that gives you time, stability, and mental energy. As the old saying goes, don't burn the candle at both ends, unless you're certain the night is short. And that leads us to the final piece of the system, which is the idea overflow problem. If you're a scanner, your mind probably feels like a factory. Ideas constantly rolling off the assembly line. Business ideas, book ideas, etc. The problem isn't lack of creativity. The problem is storage. Your brain generates ideas faster than it can organize them, and the space where you actively think, often called the working memory, is actually very small. Think of it like a tiny workbench. If you leave too many tools and materials on it, there's no space left to build anything. So eventually, everything feels overwhelming. This is why many great thinkers built external thinking systems. The solution is, whenever a new fascination appears, write it down. If you spend a week obsessing about a business plan, or an AI skill, or even a new tech idea, take notes and save the ideas. Because one day, maybe years later, those notes might connect to something unexpected. So let's bring everything together. If you've spent years feeling like a failure because you can't pick just one path, maybe the problem was never you. Maybe you were simply using the wrong map. You are not necessarily a dabbler. You might be a scanner, a potential polymath, someone whose brain was designed to explore multiple worlds of knowledge. Your job isn't to suppress that curiosity. Your job is to structure it. Build your first pillar with focus and practice serial mastery. Choose work that supports your mental energy rather than draining it, and build an external system to capture the endless sparks of your curiosity. Over time, something beautiful happens. The anxiety fades, the self-doubt quiets down, and in its place grows confidence, because you finally understand your own mind. And maybe while watching this video, you realize something slightly different about yourself. Maybe your challenge isn't choosing between many interests, but feeling like you're still searching for the one thing that truly clicks. That's perfectly normal. If that's where you are right now, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on the notification bell. In our next video, we're going to talk about how to discover the skill that can become the foundation of everything else you build. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.